Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137.
Hello, friends. Nick here with your forecast for the weekend of June 7th, 2025. Friday. In and out of the clouds, under mostly cloudy skies, trending into the clouds with rain showers and afternoon thunderstorms, possibly severe. High in the mid-50s. Wind, northwest, shifting southwest at 10 to 25 miles per hour, increasing to 30 to 45 miles per hour late. Higher gusts possible with thunderstorm activity. Friday night. In the clouds with rain showers and thunderstorms, possibly severe in the evening. Low, mid-40s. Wind, southwest, shifting west at 30 to 45 miles per hour with gusts up to 60 miles per hour. Higher gusts possible with thunderstorm activity. Wind chill falling to 25 to 35 above. Saturday. In the clouds with rain showers and a chance of thunderstorms. High around 50. Wind, west, shifting northwest at 25 to 40 miles per hour early. 15 to 30 miles per hour midday. And 25 to 40 miles per hour with gusts up to 50 miles per hour later. Higher wind gusts possible with thunderstorm activity. Wind chill 25 to 35 above, then rising. So it looks like, unfortunately, we're keeping our streak of rainy weekends going strong. Be safe out there. Have a great weekend.
Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the great Live Free or Die state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire and beyond. Here are your hosts, Mike and Nick.
Wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
Oh, very awkward beer opening situation here, so sorry about that. Episode 198, young Nick.
Hello. Older Mike?
No, I don't like that. No,
Okay,
you're
I'll just
young
call you
Nick,
Mike.
and I'm just Mike. Yeah, exactly.
I tried it. It didn't roll off the tongue very well.
Enough with that nonsense.
Seasoned Mike.
Seasoned Mike, yes, yeah. Experienced Mike.
Experienced Mike.
All right, so we are limited in time here, Nick, so I want to get this episode under 2 hours for once, but do you have a music minute, or do you want to skip?
I do have a music minute. I'll try to make it brief. I was trying to throw you a bone too because I guess I've been kind of just doing a lot of newer artists, and I know that you mentioned a few weeks back that you had actually seen Rage Against the Machine live before. So it was kind of kicking around my head. I think Be Yourself came on like my shuffle on my phone while I was running or whatever. But I've been listening to this album called Out of Exile, and that's by the band Audioslave. Came out in 2005. Yes. So are you familiar with Audioslave, Mike?
I am, yes.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, this is probably one of my favorite albums by them. But for those of you that don't know, Audioslave was a supergroup formed in Glendale, California in 2001, and it was a four-piece consisting of Soundgarden's lead singer and rhythm guitarist Chris Cornell, And then it basically had the other 3 out of 4 members of Rage Against the Machine. So it had Tom Morello on lead guitar, Tim Comerford on bass, back and vocals, and Brad Wilk on drums. So at first, this is their second album, but their first album, people were kind of like saying the obvious, like, oh, it's just Chris Cornell with Rage Against the Machine. And this album, they kind of really came to their own. I think there's similarities with Rage Against the Machine that people know, especially Tom Morello's guitar. But I think this album kind of has its own identity for sure, and it has its own sound to it that is different from probably Soundgarden or Rage Against the Machine. Some of my favorite tracks off it are Your Time Has Come, Be Yourself, which is a huge single when I was in high school. That's how I found out about this album. And Out of Exile and The Worm, some of my favorite tracks. So that's what I've been listening to lately.
Right, yeah. And a fun fact, so I'll throw in my little fun fact here. So Chris Cornell, this was not his first supergroup. He was previously in another supergroup by the name of Temple of the Dog, which Temple of the Dog was an early 90s spin-off from a group called Mother Love Bone. And I believe the lead singer of Mother Love Bone died of a heroin overdose. And this is in the Seattle scene in the early 90s. And Chris Cornell, I believe, was involved with the group Mother Love Bone. Maybe they played together or something, and had been a roommate of this lead singer from Mother Love Bone who died. And then somehow I think that some of the early members of what would be Pearl Jam had gotten involved, and one of them was Eddie Vedder.
Okay, so yeah, I knew Temple of the Dog. I've heard Mother Love Bone too, but I wouldn't know. I couldn't tell you a song by them. But that's kind of cool. Yeah, I didn't realize. It's crazy how they all were together though, like creatively, and that whole became famous.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, like Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and then later Nirvana, and that whole and the heroin got a lot of them too, which is sad.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Cornell, I don't know exactly how he passed away, but his vocals, I mean, he's right up there with Eddie Vedder as far as just iconic sound from that era.
Right. So, see, I know a little bit. Matter of fact, the only reason that this hit me when you were talking is that I had seen a TikTok about the whole history about how basically like Mother Love Bone evolved Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, and then there's some connection to Nirvana too. I forget. I'll try to find the video, but there's a guy that does music history that I follow, which is pretty interesting.
Cool. Right on.
Okay, Nick, we are a hiking podcast, though, so we're going to switch it up here, and we're going to welcome the listeners to episode 198 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. So this week, we are joined by Dr. Tim Warren. So Tim is an accomplished mountaineer who has climbed many of the world's highest peaks, including 2 expeditions on Mount Everest, where he successfully summited in 2008. So we'll speak with Tim about his adventures and his focus on helping others. He's transitioned away from the medical stuff and is now focused on being a life coach, and he runs these trips to Nepal as well. So he'll help you if you're interested in increasing your lifespan, centering your life around like hiking, cross-training, nutrition, general headspace. So all good stuff. I had a good conversation with him. And then plus we'll have more bear safety. We've got some road openings. We've got some trailhead openings. We've got some bug gear advice, notable hikes. We've got ATV crashes everywhere this weekend.
Yes.
No search and rescues on hiking though.
Yeah, which was surprising. Knock on wood. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, knock on wood. And then we've got recent hikes. Mike and Nick were everywhere this week. So I was on Frankenstein Cliff, Arethusa Falls. I did Burnt Meadow Mountain in Maine. And then Nick did like 7 hikes in the Adirondacks. He hit Speckled Pond, Hurricane Mountain, Mount Severance. And I don't even know. I haven't even heard of any of these things. But I'm interested to hear. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Nick.
Let's get started.
Let's get started.
So let's move over to our friend Christina from Wild Raven Endurance Coaching, and then we'll meet you on the other side.
Hi, I'm Christina from Wild Raven Endurance Coaching. I work with athletes of all levels, from hikers to triathletes, helping you reach your goals with personalized guidance. With years of experience hiking, mountain biking, and trail running across New England, I also have a deep knowledge of the New Hampshire 4,000 footers and the surrounding trails. Whether you're a beginner hiker or a seasoned athlete, I'll guide you towards your goals, reducing injury risk and improving your performance through smart, tailored coaching. Are you looking to transition from hiking to mountain running? I'm here to make that journey easier too. My approach combines strength training, mindfulness, and life balance on and off the trail. Let me help you find more joy in your sport while getting stronger and healthier along the way. Visit www.coaching.christinafolsick.com and start your adventure today.
All right, Nick, here we go. So we wanted to start the show with a reminder that the 200th episode event is coming up. So yeah, we're going to start marketing this hardcore.
Yeah, yes. Exciting times.
It is, yep. So join Mike, Nick, and Stomp. Stomp will be returning for this episode. So I told you a couple of episodes ago when we said Stomp was going to be stepping back that he would return, and he's already returned twice now. So, but there'll be music and DJ activities under the main tent at the Delta Dental Mount Washington Road Race, which is on June 14th, 2025. And so Stomp will be running the music from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. under the main tent. And then after the race starts, then we'll do a live recording starting at 9 a.m. and that will be our 200th episode. So if you're in the area and you want to cheer on the runners on the Delta Dental Mount Washington Road Race, come on down and check that out. And then you can sit and watch us do our episode. We may even get on the mic.
Will we?
Who knows?
You never know.
So, but yeah, this will be at the Mount Washington Auto Road. So thank you for the Auto Road. Thank you to Delta Dental Mount Washington Road Race. Very excited for the event. 200 episodes, Nick. Quite a milestone.
Yeah, you'll have to do, I know you're a stats guy, but you'll have to figure out how many minutes of podcasting that you guys are going to have by that point.
Yeah,
how many hours or something, or days.
Right. I did something like that around the 100th episode, I think. Yeah. Like I totaled up the amount of recording, but also then I think it's fair to say, used to be a lot more, but I feel like we've dialed it in quite a bit. But I would say it's probably between scheduling, script work, and research. Research, depending on if I'm doing a history topic or not, I'll get deep in stuff. But I would say it's fair to say, like, for every hour of recorded show, there's about an hour's worth of like work behind the scenes. So if we do a 2-hour episode, it's probably about 2 hours worth of additional work, right? Well, for me anyway, you guys do the editing. That's another.
Yeah, I mean, Stomp was faster than me, but I would say it's probably, I mean, I generally end up listening through the episode at least once and then kind of hashing through it and dividing it into segments. So it's a good amount of work, but I mean, it's not like pouring through Appalachia articles necessarily, which I promise I will do at some point. But I have not done it yet.
You got to be a special kind of weirdo to like. Let me see what they were talking about Frankenstein Cliff in 1897.
Like Mike casually bored on a Sunday afternoon. I'm gonna go look up the University of California and see what they got in Appalachia.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, but so that's it. 200th episode is coming up. Now we have a list of New Hampshire stuff here, Nick. So do you want to start? Do you want to share with the listeners the status of all the gates that are opening up?
Sure. I'd be happy to share the gate statuses. So this is the time of the year, I feel like Memorial Day weekend and after, where we're finally starting to look at stuff hopefully opening. So you can get to all those nice trailheads higher up in the whites off these sensitive roads to weather. So Jefferson Notch Road is still closed. I think that's one of the later ones to open. Traditionally, it's one of the highest kind of areas in the whites as far as trailhead roads to get to, and that's the one for Caps Ridge. So I'm sure people are eager to see that open, but still closed. So it sounds like Zealand, Gale River, Haystack, Mount Clinton, Success Pond Road, Tripoli, Zealand Road, and the Glen Ellis Falls parking area that's been closed for quite some time are all open. So that's exciting. You got most of the major roads to access trails in the whites pretty much open. So that's super cool.
Yeah, that's good news. So Glen Ellis will be good because then it's a good hopping off spot if you want to do Wildcat Ridge, and it's a good hopping off spot for the Glen Boulder hike or if you want to get up to Davis Path. So before you'd have to like take the Daratissima Trail down from Pinkham Notch. So I think it's been closed for a year and a half or so.
Yeah, something like that. I know you still see cars parked on the side of the road, but that's a good one. Yeah, I had to do Arethusa doing isolation last year, so that wasn't too bad, but it definitely is more convenient to just be able to park there if you're headed to isolation up Glen Boulder.
Correct. And then I'm trying to think. Oh, so Sawyer River is still closed. So the I guess Carrigain is essentially just it's an isolation type hike now. It's just a long mileage hike.
Yeah. I mean, it's still pretty. I mean, it's nice walking on the road. You got sort of I will say, like, doing it in the winter now that you have to do that any time of year now, for the duration of close. But you do notice all those abandoned buildings out there and stuff from the old town. So that's kind of cool. I probably wouldn't have noticed that before just driving through, especially with the vegetation.
Right. Yeah. And people can consider going the back way. I think you can go in from like Ethan Pond and then go up Desolation. That's on my list of things to do. I got a long list. Yeah. So. Anyway, cool. So good for yay for us. The gates are opened. Yes, finally. And then Nick, I had put a note out here. So also yay for the hiking community. No search and rescue. And I'll be honest. I was the one that sent out on the text. So me, Stomp, and Nick have I have multiple text group, but me, Stomp, and Nick have a text message thing going on, and I messaged Stomp on I think Thursday night, given the weather conditions. Forecast, I was like, oh boy, this is not going to be a good weekend. And I was wrong. I was wrong. Yeah, I will freely admit, when I was reading the forecast for Friday into Saturday, it looked kind of like crap. So kudos to people. Either maybe they find another hikes or just staying safe up there and being prepped for basically winter conditions. But good job, everybody. Right. Hopefully it's not preemptive. I know it's early in the season, but but that was awesome. That was good, because I was thinking, like, okay, if someone's got Friday, Saturday, I think that there was like a foot of snow that was being reported on Mount Washington and the higher elevations, like Friday into Saturday or something. So there was a ton of snow up there. I saw that the auto road was like plowing the road on the higher elevations. So there was a lot going on up there. But my observation was a lot of people stayed low, and then a lot of people waited until, say, Sunday or Monday, and then the weather condition was a little bit nicer. Yep. So good for us. And then there was a population of people, recreation people, that were out of control this weekend, and that was the ATV, OTV crowd. So there was, I think, 8 incidents with all-terrain vehicle crashes. Yeah, UTVs, ATVs, OHRVs, which I'm not sure what that actually stands for. But I think that they're mostly those side-by-side cars. Yeah, they were. Whoever was the editor for Fish and Game had his work cut out for them. Yes. When they released all of those in one day. Yeah. So there was 8 of them. They're all over the place. A couple up in Pittsburgh, which I think is, like, when you see them up that far north, typically they're renters and they're from out of state. And then there was a couple down by me. There was somebody in by Exeter, Newton, New Hampshire, somebody from Seabrook, and then one in Derry, one in Effingham. So they're all over the place. But yeah, if you're going to be riding those things, I think you just take it slow and stay within your limits. And then if you're not experienced, go with someone that knows what they're doing. Because I think a lot of these are just inexperienced people that are just driving off trail or flipping them over, and they don't realize how powerful those things are. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder too if I would assume it's always muddy this time of year, so it's not like a conditions thing where it was just kind of random. It seems like all these, literally, I kind of poked through all of them, and they just seem like people just being reckless, unfortunately, and not respecting the machine. Exactly, or they're just not experienced enough to know. Like Stomp was talking about the snowmobiles. I wouldn't know, downhill, going left, you're more apt to hit the accelerator and things like that. So there's probably little things that you have to learn. I did one of these things. I rented one in Arizona with the family, and my observation was, these things are really powerful. It was a side-by-side, so 4 of us could sit. Okay. And it's like a little dune buggy, but the thing is incredibly powerful. And if you're reckless on those, you could certainly flip them or get injured. So wear helmets, make sure that you're in your seatbelt if it offers that, and then take it slow, because these things are much more powerful than I think people realize. Yeah, I think you can make them road legal too in some cases, because I've seen them I think staying up in Gorham before, in the summer, you see them. They're all over everywhere. Gorham, Yeah, they're all over Gorham, so they have license plates and they cruise around. So just stay safe. Not my thing, Nick. Not my thing. I'd actually rather go fishing than go off-roading ATVing, and I don't like fishing. Yeah, I don't know. I never really grew up doing ATVs or things like that. So Yeah, my brother had a dirt bike, and we rode a lot, quads, trikes, dirt bikes, and all that stuff. But I never loved it.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got the road status, we've got the elevation warning. So I think things are melting fast. So obviously keep an eye on those river conditions. We've talked about gauge measurements and safety there, but hopefully it'll stay warm, and then this will be the end of the snow. But it's going to be a couple more weeks, I think, at higher elevations.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and then I want to just give a public service announcement. We were joking around a little bit about bear safety, Nick. Look, we joke around here a little bit.
A little bit. We gotta keep it light sometimes.
We have to keep it light. So we were talking about there was a bear that there was an incident with a black bear on Bond Cliff Trail, and we had joked around because the hiker just basically threw his backpack at the bear and said, like, I'm out of here. So, and then he couldn't find his backpack. So the bear obviously had it was stalking him for about 25 minutes, and somehow it knew that it could like kind of force its way into the backpack, I guess. So we had joked around and said, like, if that happened to us, we would throw it a Snickers bar. So I just want people to know that was a joke. I don't encourage feeding the black bear. And I wanted to just remind people, and I'll include this link in the show notes, that the Forest Service for the White Mountains put out a reminder and said, although many visitors and campers never encounter a bear, the forest is their home, and bears can quickly become habituated to human food. National Forest staff have recently received reports of bears interacting with hikers. The best way to stop this behavior to ensure these bears do not receive additional food from people is to ensure that they do not receive additional food. Read the rules and signs about bears posted at campgrounds and trailheads, and follow the instructions on how to properly store food. Free beer canister rentals are available on a first-come, first-served basis at all of our offices and visitor centers. Feeding bears intentionally or unintentionally is prohibited. So do not feed the bears. And like I said, I was just joking. And my advice is that you're better off having bear spray with you and never having to use it than, I think, throwing a Snickers bar at Yogi to escape.
100%. I would hope most people knew that you weren't seriously carrying a Snickers bar out there with you, but I digress.
Well, I always have a Snickers bar with me, but
to feed sometimes to a bear, Milky Way. I should clarify, to feed to a bear it's to feed the mic, it's not to feed the bear.
Well, also to give to thru hikers if I run into them.
Yes, that's too. Yeah, it's kind of like I look at it like if you get a dog or a cat, if you start feeding from the table, they're going to come back and want human food, so just don't do it.
Right. Yeah, and I wonder with this bear whether or not maybe it got a hold of food through a bad like bear hang or something, or somehow it got fed. So you're better off, like, even though we talk about, you'll hear it a lot, like people say you don't need bear spray, but as long as you store it safely in your backpack and don't spray yourself like Stomp does, then it's not a bad thing to have with you, just in case, because you don't want to be faced with the choice of, do I throw food at a bear in order to buy time to escape? And then that bear is going to get killed. So you're better off whacking that thing with a bear spray, and then it's going to learn its lesson. It's going to go, I don't want to go near humans again. Yeah,
like you said, I mean, you got to think if they get used to that, a lot of times these bears end up being euthanized pretty much because they become problematic and it's dangerous and doesn't end well for the bear.
Yep. And Nick, a little intel for the listeners. Our friend Paul, shout out to Paul Gamel. He is the trail maintainer for the Bond Cliff Trail, and he was out there. I think he did a nice overnight with a traverse out to Zealand. So he had let us know that he had no encounters with this particular black bear. So it's probably moved on to 13 Falls or Owl's Head or some other area.
Yeah, it was good to hear. And shout out to Paul for cleaning up that trail. I was actually texting with him a little bit today because he said it took him like 9.5 hours to go across in his day, and it took us 16 in the winter. And he was showing me some pictures of Westbound without the snow. But thanks, Paul, for getting out there and cleaning that trail. I think it was abandoned for a while before him too, so all of us surely appreciate it.
Yeah. Shout out to Paul and all the trail maintainers out there getting it done.
Absolutely.
All right, so on to some national stuff here. So I pulled this article, Mount Baldy, Nick. We've had a lot of stories about Mount Baldy, so I think it's pretty close to Los Angeles, and it attracts quite a crowd. There's been a lot of high-profile fatalities on Mount Baldy, but this one here is a news story about a dangerous, violent man who has allegedly been harassing hikers on the trail at Mount Baldy and the San Gabriel Mountains over the last several months. So now deputies are searching for additional potential victims. Now, this article is wild because the guy's last name is Flynn, and they spell it like 4 different ways, which is impressive. So it's Flinn. In some parts, it's Flynn, and then Flin. So they need a copy editor on Fox 11 in LA. But anyway, the guy basically has been harassing hikers. So now deputies are saying they're looking for anyone who may have been harassed by this guy, Flynn. Any additional information, call the LA County Sheriff's Department in San Dimas Station. And what they know is that as of 10 a.m. Friday, when this news story was reported, a woman returned to her vehicle after a hike with her dog at Mount Baldy near the Dry Lake Canyon and was allegedly confronted by Patrick Flynn, age 66. She claims Flynn threw branches and exclaimed that the forest was his home. There were other prior reports of this guy chasing hikers with a sledgehammer. So he's been arrested.
Terrifying.
And yeah. So he doesn't look like he looks like a pretty old, kind of elderly guy that's all torn up and stuff. But it sounds like he's living out there in the mountains. He's got a sledgehammer. He's throwing branches at people and claiming that he lives in the forest. So he's been charged with 5 felony counts of criminal threats and 1 felony count of false imprisonment. So
Yikes.
Look out for this guy if you're in Mount Baldy.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah, I feel like there is you guys have had a lot of stories over the years of stuff, interesting things and wild things happening on Mount Baldy. But like you said, the proximity to LA probably explains some of that.
I think so, yeah. If I was like homeless and crazy and I was living in LA, I would try to get out to the mountains. It would be much better.
It's the spot.
Yeah, I think so. All right, this next one, shout out to Cami Rita Sherpa, who completed his a record 31st summit of Mount Everest. So, and we'll be talking to Dr. Tim in a little while about Mount Everest, but that's super impressive.
Big congrats. That's nuts.
Yes. So
Impressive
Cami
human
Rita
being.
Sherpa, yeah, this guy's seen a lot. So. And last but not least on our news articles, Nick, I wanted to just do a public service announcement. If you're out there with a dog, I just saw this. This is a sad story. This is an Appalachian Trail Hikers 2025 group. 2-year-old dog. This is a good-looking dog. It looks like a Weimaraner type dog. I don't know. It's like a chocolate lab, something like that. 2-year-old dog, and unfortunately, the dog passed away yesterday after eating a discarded item, a sanitary item that is used frequently on the Appalachian Trail, and the sanitary napkin, I guess, is what you would call it. And unfortunately, it created an obstruction, and he developed a severe infection and didn't make it. So they were frequent, I guess, local hikers of a section of the Appalachian Trail, and he loved it so much. The owner is asking people to please dispose of your trash properly, and maybe Finn's story will save another dog who loved the trail as much as he did. So rest in peace, doggy Finn, and I think just be careful about what you leave out on trail.
Yeah, it's horrible. I have a friend, I was texting you too, Mike, but this happened to that. Luckily, they got it pretty quick. I think the owner recognized it right away, so the dog threw up before anything could kind of get more serious and need surgery. But yeah, sad story. Got to be careful disposing of any sort of trash outside, because a lot of times animals can't help themselves and they munch it down, and then there's dire consequences.
Yep. Yeah. Pack it out, or depending on the legality of it, if you can legally and effectively bury it and make sure that it can't be uncovered by animals, then go for it. But the best bet is to pack it all out.
Yep.
So rest in peace, doggy Finn. And then, Nick, we had put in here, we wanted to talk a little bit about gear related to bug spray, bug nets, and I got some deer fly patches. So did you encounter any black flies or mosquitoes when you were hiking this weekend?
So we did at the first hike that I'll recap in a bit, called Spectacle Pond, but luckily we didn't see too many black flies and mosquitoes out in the Adirondacks. We did get them, like I said, by that pond, and kind of threw it on quickly. I usually use like the deep woods, like I think it's Cutter or whatever stuff. I know it's not, it's recommended to sort of wash yourself after you use it, but I'd rather have that on and not end up with any ticks and mosquitoes. It seems it always works really well for me. But that's the only spot that we saw it this weekend.
Yeah. We had some black flies on the beach, Brownfield, but not much when I was hiking. A little bit in Burnt Meadow on Monday when it was warmer, but nothing on Frankenstein Cliff or Arethusa. It was too cold.
Yeah, I've heard definitely some of our friends mention that the black flies were out, and I know Stomp had mentioned like even a couple weeks back that they were. So maybe just with the cooler temperatures this weekend, it kind of kept them at bay. Yeah,
exactly.
But
so
they're coming.
They are coming, so we definitely recommend bug spray, and I've used a bunch of different types of bug spray, but I think anything with DEET on it, and I tend to try to hit myself up before the bugs come around, so it's your choice on how heavy you want to go there. And then I also have a bug net, and I haven't really had to use the bug net too frequently. I think the biggest time I needed to use it was Zeta Pass when I was hiking up in that area. There was an insane amount of mosquitoes. But I usually spray that bug net with bug spray and then throw that thing on, and it usually does a pretty good job of keeping the bugs away.
Does it kind of fall over your hat like when you wear it, or do you just put it on your head?
Yeah, I wear it with a hat so that it doesn't go right to my right on my face. It pushes out a little bit. So yeah, I recommend wearing it with a hat, and then like I said, hitting it with bug spray, and then it'll do a pretty decent job. It's still the mosquitoes are gonna find you, but at least they don't land like right on your face.
Yeah. And then you use deer fly patches too sometimes, right? I've actually never tried those before.
Yeah, so in May you'll get the black flies, and then in a couple of weeks you'll see the mosquitoes blow up, and then after the mosquitoes end, typically I think late June is where you'll get the deer flies, and typically those will run from into July, no problem, and you can get really swarmed there. So the worst deer flies I've ever had have been on Kilkenny Ridge Traverse when I did that in a July 4th weekend. So I'll be bringing those out. And basically these deer fly patches, I've linked them in the show notes before. I'll do it before. What you do is you attach, it's just a sticky material. You just attach it with a safety pin onto the back of your hat, and the deer flies they'll fly to the back of your head or your neck, and then they stick to the sticky part, and then you just collect them, and you can use it multiple times. And I've had upwards of like 20-30 deer flies on the back of my sticky thing, and it's really helpful because those things are annoying.
And deer flies, I feel like, are they just the ones that have like the super long legs that you see? Like they're really
they're like the little triangles, and they're super fast. And you try to hit them, and they run away.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't like I've heard of them for sure before, but I wasn't familiar exactly with which ones they were. I feel like black flies are the ones I hate the most and think of the most.
Black flies are really tiny, and they swarm you.
And they bite like chunks of flesh out of you. They don't just like suck blood.
Yeah, they usually get these big red spots, welts, and the mosquitoes are a little bit slower. You can kill them pretty easily, but they're just endless. But the deer flies are the most annoying to me.
Excellent.
Hey, what's that sound? It must be time for the pop culture segment with Mike and Stomp.
Stomp wanted us to give, I'm going to skip the dad joke tonight, but Stomp wanted us to give a heads up to the listeners to check out this movie, Last Breath. I was going to watch it, but I haven't got a chance to watch it yet. Nick, did you watch it at all?
I did not watch it yet. I was reading the synopsis, though, and it sounds very interesting, and I definitely will be checking it out.
You want to give the synopsis?
Sure. So, Last Breath is a movie that just came out. Survival thriller film directed by Alex Parkinson. And it looks like it stars Woody Harrelson and a couple other co-stars. So Woody Harrelson, definitely the big name here from what I can tell. And it basically sounds like it follows a team of divers who work and maintain undersea gas lines in the North Sea. And it looks like they sort of end up into some trouble after that. Don't want to spoil too much of it. But it definitely sounds interesting, and it seems like it's a fair setup for a very, very suspenseful movie.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out. There's also a documentary, I think, that came out in 2019 that the movie's based on, so maybe worth checking that out too.
Very cool.
Excellent. So, Nick, 48 Peaks. So, use your passion for hiking to help end Alzheimer's. Join 400 plus hikers as they climb New Hampshire's 4,000 footers or create their own challenge to support the mission of the Alzheimer's Association. The annual hiker celebration will take place Saturday, June 21st at Tuckerman Brewing with raffles, food, and an amazing community. Hike that weekend or any day that you want this summer. No fundraising minimums required, but those who raise $100 will receive the 2025 Performance Grade Purple T-shirt. The deadline for that was May 23rd, so if you hit that, you'll get your T-shirt. Let's turn the White Mountains purple to end Alzheimer's. Visit alz.org/48 Peaks to learn more. And if you are interested in joining the SLASR Alzheimer's team, our 48 Peaks Alzheimer's team, you can click on the link that I'll include in the show notes. Right now we have 13 people on our team, Nick. We're violating wilderness regulation rules, but we're not going to be in the wilderness, so we're okay.
Yes, I was noticing on that page that it looks like we got a good amount of participants, which is fun. I'm sure it'll be a great time. But yeah, it's going to be a big group of folks for sure.
Yep, we do. Our friend Paul just signed up. We've got Andy from the COG I'm excited to hike with. Stomp, rumor has it, he's going to be joining us. Nobby hikes. We're going to be hiking in memory of his family, his father and mother, and he's got some of his family joining us. We got our friend Tim. We got our friend John here. I'm excited to meet them. And then Caroline and Devin. And then a couple of other folks that have signed up, Jennifer and Janelle. So we're pretty loaded here. We're going to go up Mount Madison, so I'm excited.
Yeah, hopefully we get some good weather for that. I was also curious if anybody on our team actually needs them for their 48 or something or some list. So that adds some extra stoke to the getting up there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. We'll have to find out. I got a text message going, so we'll check. There's dogs. There's everything. It's chaos.
Yeah. It is. That was just
dogs and cats sleeping together. We don't know what's happening here.
I wish I had a cat that could hike to bring it and be like, I'm going to bring my cat.
That's true. So, all right. So if you're interested in getting SLASR stickers, you can check them. You can get some at Ski Fanatics and also at Spinner's Pizza Parlor in Andover, Mass. And if you want to get SLASR swag, check out our bonfire shop. You can choose between our super popular hoodies, classic or V-neck tees, and more. The color selection is great, and they are priced to move. Help spread the word about SLASR and represent today. Mrs. Stomp chose all the color palette, so show some love to Mrs. Stomp.
It's a fantastic color palette. Fantastic.
It is. So, all right, this is the part of the show, Nick, where we talk about what beer we are drinking. So what do you got tonight?
So I'm not drinking anything tonight, but I definitely had some beers over the long weekend. And I did want to shout out to two specific places out in the Adirondacks. One, Paradox Brewery in Northampton, New York. It's right off 87, maybe like half an hour from Keene Valley. And it was like maybe 15 minutes from where we stayed at Scroon Lake. It's been there a few times before, but they have really good beer. They have good food. Highly recommend stopping in there. And they have some cool different swag. It might have been the two beers that I drank while I was on premises, but I did buy like one of those little brewery tap signs, and Ash was making fun of me because she's like, do you need another one? I'm like, I'll hang it up in the office room and stuff, so it'll be cool. But they have good beer and good food. And then after we did one of our hikes to Hurricane Mountain, we checked out the Big Crow Tap House, and that's in Keene, New York, right on 9N. So it's pretty close to a bunch of different trailheads. Had good food and beer, so check them out if you happen to be in the area.
I knew we should have gone left back there.
Stomp, don't worry. I know it's this way. I've got a feeling in my gut.
Are you sure you're not about to have a bowel emergency?
Totally. We got this.
But I just blew out my hip. Fell down that gully with my 40-year-old microspikes.
Suck it up, Stomp. It's 4 p.m. We're at 3,500 feet. We got 9 miles back to the parking lot. Your leg may be broken. We got no cell connection, and we can't feel our fingers. But we're finishing all of my list tonight. By the way, I need some water. I'm empty.
I would if I could see what I'm doing, but my headlamp batteries are dead.
You gotta be kidding me. What a chump. This is the last time I hike with you.
Whatever, mister. Do you know me? I have a podcast.
Whatever.
Let's find out what Mike and Stomp have been hiking.
Yeah, and I will say, and people can check out Nick in Nature on Instagram. I'm assuming you got some of your photos up there, but like the hikes that you did in the Adirondacks, like I you know, people have told me the Adirondacks are amazing, and I've seen tons of pictures, and I've always wanted to check it out, but like your pictures were amazing, and I think it was a good kind of mood. It was a little bit moody, a little bit of clouds mixed with blue skies, and like you hit it on some perfect days. And then I think that you went with some lower elevation hikes, but like after looking at those, I was like, I gotta get out to the Adirondacks. So where did you go?
So initially when we kind of got there, we checked out Spectacle Pond. So we had some time to kill before check-in, and that was on Friday. So Spectacle Pond is actually in the Faro Lake Wilderness, which is sort of the eastern sort of side of the Adirondacks. Almost extends to really the Vermont border. But this was a nice family hike. We just sort of wanted to do something with Rylan, and my buddy Wilkie was with us, just kind of warm the legs up. This one was 3.4 miles and about 400 feet. And it takes you to this nice pond that's namesake of the trail, Spectacle Pond. If it was clear, we could have seen Faro Mountain, I believe that's around 3,000 feet out in the distance, but we couldn't see a ton. Like you said, it was kind of moody. But still just a nice hike to get out. The forest was super green, almost a neon green with all the rain that we've had. So that was a bunch of fun. Do you want to just go through and just kind of hit all? All right, it's cool.
Yeah, I'll get to my beer afterwards.
All right. Yeah, this seems like a solid segue. So yeah, yes. Friday we did that. Excuse me. And yeah, like a lot of times, a little back history, like I've been doing this with some friends for, I don't know, like 9-10 years now, where we go up and try to hit stuff Memorial Day weekend, whether it's New York or Maine or whatever. And this year was just tough when we saw that snow come in and the conditions with the snowpack. And yeah, we really opted to stay lower, kind of out of the high peaks. I kind of heard from some people on Facebook that were coals out in the Great Range that had 5 feet of snow still sticking around in them. Like people literally had snowshoes going out of the lodge still. I wanted to do Mount Colden, which I mentioned like last week or a few weeks back. And yeah, there was just still snow on the northeastern spine of that. So like we just sort of pulled the plug, and I'm like, we're going to check out some of these lower hikes with great views. Hunted down the Lake Placid Niner list and did some research on Adirondack.net, which is sort of just their tourism website, and just looked up top hikes and kind of came to these other few. So on Saturday, and this was convenient, we checked out Mount Severance, which was maybe 5 minutes from where we happened to be staying. Just a 2.4 mile hike, 700 feet out and back. And this has a beautiful view over Schroon Lake itself. I was saying Schroon all week, I guess like a knucklehead tourist, because I asked one of the guys when we went to when we went to Big Crow Tap House, I'm like, how do you say that? Is it Schroon? He's like, no, it's Schroon. It's not Schroon. It's Schroon Lake. But this mountain had a beautiful view over Schroon Lake on one side, and then on the other side, you could see Paradox Lake, which Paradox is kind of a township and also what Paradox Brewery is named after. Looked out towards the Faro Lake Wilderness, and like you said, it was kind of, this day was like a high cloud ceiling, but really dry, so you actually could see in the distance pretty nicely, which was super cool. And that was Saturday's hike. Didn't take Rylan up that one. We didn't break out her until Monday. Sunday ended up being the quote unquote bigger hike day. We checked out Hurricane Mountain, which is widely regarded as one of the nicest hikes in the Adirondacks, like regardless of high peak or any other sort of like just ledge hike. It is on the Lake Placid Niner list, and it had amazing views. I think you absolutely have to check it out. I feel dumb I'm like halfway through my high peaks and I've never checked this thing out. So this one is, you can find this in basically Keene Valley. Hurricane Mountain is from the southern approach, which we did off 9N, is 6.8 miles and 2,100 feet. Really, I would say pretty moderate hike. It never gets super steep. Trail was super muddy, which is kind of an Adirondack thing, and especially in the spring, it was just soaked. It was like a river basically going up it. And this reminded me a little bit of our day way back when we did Adams and Madison, where it cleared with the undercast. But like I was joking, I remember you being like, we're gonna manifest this, and like we got to the top and we were climbing up the fire tower, and behind my buddy Mike Cordero, it started to get a little bit blue, and within 20 or 30 minutes of us being up there, it completely cleared up. Like there were clouds still on some of the high peaks, but it was just gorgeous. Like 360 views off a bunch of ledges. It did have an old fire tower at the top that we climbed up, and you could get even a better viewpoint, and it actually had sort of a map that was cool at the top that showed you what you were looking at. In that area, you've sort of got Lake Champlain off to your east. You can see into Canada to the north, to like sort of the southeast, southwest. You basically got all the high peaks wilderness. Could kind of pick out Nipple Top and Dix and a bunch of the other high peaks. And yeah, it was beautiful. Like we hung up there for probably like an hour and a half and we're like, okay, we probably should get heading back down. But Hurricane for me was definitely the kind of peak, not to, I guess I'm making a pun there, the peak of the trip as far as hiking wise, and views. That was beautiful. And then Monday we wanted to get out one more time. And I've been by this one a bunch of times. I've been out of the Adirondack Lodge a bunch of times, but we checked out Mount Joe. So this is right out of the Adirondack Lodge. It's 3 miles, 800 feet if you do a counterclockwise loop. And the only deal with this one I will say is that there's a short side trail and then a long slide trail that goes down the back. The short side trail was pretty wet and steep. It goes up probably 500 feet in like less than half a mile at one point. I was fine doing it. I did it with Rylan on my back. So again, it wasn't like wild, like Northern Presidential Trail, but it definitely had to take your time. It was wet, muddy, eroded, but Mount Joe had great views. And it fortunately was supposed to be blue skies, but ended up being cloudy, high cloud ceiling, but just epic views out to pretty much the High Peaks Wilderness with like Colden. You could see Marcy, the highest peak in New York, the highest point in New York. See all the McIntyre Range and stuff. And it was cool that I've been there enough too, where I kind of am vaguely familiar with what everything that I'm looking at is. And I kind of have a clue, whereas the first time I've ever was there, you're like, it's cool too, to not know what you're looking at, but I'm kind of a little bit familiar. And Mount Joe is also a Lake Placid diner. And then on the way down, you basically walk right by this from the Adirondack Lodge. And this is just one of those things, been out of there multiple times with Ash. And we didn't check it out till we did Street and I this winter, but Heart Lake is right over there, which is basically a lake that overlooks kind of the McIntyre Range and whatnot. And it's just beautiful, like crystal clear lake with a mirror reflection right there. So yeah, that was pretty much our little Adirondack rundown. But we lucked out with kind of the weather. Like it was not as wet and rainy as it was supposed to be. I saw people coming out of the lodge that turned back from trying to get to a couple different peaks, going out towards really to like Skylight and Gray, and just saying like that. I caught some guys with snowshoes and chatted with them, and they're like, yeah, the snow out there in spots is like, it's not a lot left, but where there is snow left out in the Adirondacks, there's a lot of it still at elevation. So I'm sure it'll fade fast. A couple weeks is all it'll take, but yeah.
How were the crowds where you went? Was it busy?
So not bad at all. Spectacle Pond, which is not like a super popular hike, we saw like maybe one other person. When we checked out Severance Mountain, and that's right in Scroon Lake, right off of Route 9, saw maybe like 10-ish people. Hurricane was kind of the first one where I'm like, it was the Sunday by that point, and it was the first really nicer weather day. It was supposed to clear up later in the day. But didn't see any. We had the summit to ourselves on the way up. We got up pretty early. I think we hit the trail at like 7 or something. Saw a bunch on the way down. So the crowds finally moved in. Then we went to the Adirondack Lodge. We were able to get in the lot, which can be problematic if you're there Columbus Day weekend to get there later time. But yeah, they still had plenty of parking, and definitely Mount Joe was like the most we saw. Like that's a big family hike. It's one of the Lake Placid Niners. It's right there. It's a short, steep hike with great views, so it's not surprising at all. Like I wouldn't say it wasn't any more crowds than I expected. And I think Hurricane, honestly, when we were up there by ourselves with the fire tower steward for a bit, like I was kind of surprised, but glad that we got it to ourselves and got there early. So it was fun.
Wow. Well, good for you and the family. That sounds like a great Memorial Day weekend. You got out Friday, Saturday. It wasn't possible. Well, I mean, you could get out, but it was just miserable here on Friday and Saturday.
So how was your Memorial Day weekend, Mike? What'd you get up to?
It was good. I'll start off with, I'm drinking a Keeper IPA from Castle Island, and they have a nice like little Pinto wagon.
Oh, cool.
On there, which is cool. But I got I ended up staying home on Friday and Saturday just because the weather wasn't great, and we had a memorial mass for my my mother-in-law, so we went down to North Reading for that, and then headed up to Maine. And I had bigger aspirations, but then the reality of how it wasn't great out there in the higher elevation, so I switched it up, and I was talking to our friend Paul Lamar, and he had thrown out that he was thinking about doing Frankenstein Cliff, but he wasn't going to be up there till later in the day on Saturday, so I just decided to do it solo, and I'd want to get out solo for a little bit, it's a little while anyway, so I went and I did Frankenstein Cliff, and I had never done that before. I'd taken the kids to Arethusa Falls a bunch of times, but never done Frankenstein. So I just went in a counterclockwise loop. So I went under the railroad trestle, then climbed up, walked over across the trestle to get that view, got some nice photos there, and then came back around and then up to the cliffs. You go under the cliffs and then loop around. It's cool up there. There's a burnt forest, which there was a forest fire a couple of years ago, so you get a little bit of views of the burnt forest. And then the cliffs looking out into Crawford Notch are just amazing. You can see right down to Chicora. And, there's probably like 3 or 4 different viewpoints that you can hit on the cliffs. And then I went over to Falcon Cliff, which was, fun little side trail that I wanted to just cover while I was up there. Okay. And then I headed down to Arethusa Falls. And that's when I started. I didn't see a single person until I hit that little trail that links to Arethusa Falls. And then walked down to the falls, ran into a guy that TJ, shout out to listener TJ, he recognized me and we started talking, and then we ended up just hiking out together, which was cool. It's good,
that's
good
awesome.
Guy.
That's awesome.
He was telling me he's won a notable hike of the week, so I was like, all right, well, let's hang out. So good dude, though. He's doing the 52 with a view, and I was actually able to slide him an extra Vaucluse I had in the car, so he was happy. So hopefully, let me know how that went, TJ. But yeah, he's a great guy.
Cool. How was Arethusa Falls ripping too with all the rain?
It was ripping, yeah, it was coming down nicely. So we were, in fact, me and TJ were talking. He's like, "You ever climb up above?" And I was like, "Well, I can see the herd path to get up there," but I said today's not the day. It was raining a little bit on Sunday. It was still drizzling, so I did have the umbrella broken out for a little while.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to go check that out. We checked it out in the winter with Rylan and saw people ice climbing it, which was pretty cool to watch for a bit, but I imagine it must be really impressive to see when it's melted.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And then on Monday, I got out. Again, Monday, I was like, well, maybe I'll go do the Bald-Faced Loop and scout out the trail that I'm going to be maintaining, but I wanted to just get back. I was working on some stuff at the camp to try to burn some of the brush because we're cutting trees down. Papa's cutting these trees down, so we're going to be doing a lot of log splitting this summer. But I ended up getting out to just local. I did Burnt Meadow. I did like the full loop. I went up the backside and bushwhacked up the slide. And it was a great day. That was like probably the best day of the weekend. But yeah, Burnt Meadow was a great mountain. It's for 4 miles. Maybe, I don't know, 1,500 feet of elevation gain total, I think. It's a little bit up and down, but great mountain. Highly recommended. It did get crowded as I was coming down, but when I got on trail at 8 o'clock, there was nobody.
Cool. Yeah, it looked like you had some beautiful pictures too. I was going to ask, you had one of yourself. Did you have someone take that, or did you just put your phone on a rock or something?
I just put my phone on a rock.
Okay. That was well done.
I was like, I'm going to do like an artsy like selfie. So I did the timer, and like every time I do those, I knock the phone off where I have it like barely on a rock or a tree or something. So, but
excellent.
Yeah, I had to do one moody sort of picture. But anyway, that was the adventure. So I feel like we both got some miles in here, Nick.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll be trying to share more pictures of the SLASR page. I took a bunch, and I took video on Severance Mountain, Hurricane, and Mount Joe. That I'll try to share out eventually and let people know when that's done. So yeah, I was carrying the whole deal, and the camera held up pretty well considering how wet and muddy it was. So I think It's been weatherproofed.
Perfect.
It's time for SLASR's Notable Hike of the Week. If you want to be considered for the Hike of the Week, simply tag SLASR on your social media post.
So let's do the notable listener hikes, and then we'll get into Dr. Tim here. So notable listener hikes. So you're going to have to pick, Nick. So that friggin' hiker.
Making me pick, putting the pressure on.
Yep. Mount Hale Loop. So he up Zealand Trail, down Hale Brook for 25 out of 48. So he's getting there. So he reached the halfway point, which is impressive. And then Duchess 3663. Always wonder what these numbers mean. What does it mean?
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I'm like, what is 3? Yeah. March 663. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So we'll have to say, Duchess, tell us what 3663 means. North and South Doublehead for 23 out of 52. The Doubleheads only count as one for the 52 with a view. Is that right?
Yeah, they only count as one. I had someone, I think it was on Facebook or something one time, and they thought they counted these as 2, and they like came at me because I pointed out that they were 1. And I'm like, hey, like, don't be mad when you don't have 52 peaks and you think you have 51 and they go to the list. Because it is like Morgan and Percival are a pair, but those are like 2 separate. And then you got Welch Dickey is 2 peaks, but it's also 1 entry. Like, I didn't make the list, so don't shoot the messenger.
You just couldn't wait to ruin that person's day back. It was back when Facebook was...
Yeah. I did it with a little winking, a coy winking emoji.
So anyway, North and South doublehead for 23 out of 52 Dutchess. Yeah, that is. And then KK48 Peaks did the Wildcat Traverse. So up Polecat and down 19 Mile for 38, 39, and 40. So that's a triple. So you're getting close, KK.
It was 38 and 39 out of 48.
Oh, out of 48. Sorry, I thought it was a triple.
They're getting close, though. They're getting close.
I'm losing my mind, yeah. I'm not paying attention here. So next time, do Carter Dome, and then you'll do a triple. I hate picking a username. Our friend Jen Coons did Muddy Creek Falls. She's been traveling all over the place. She's been in Maryland and West Virginia. She's been doing all kinds of fun stuff. So shout out to Jen.
Yeah.
And then Dave Shits in the Woods, Mount Kineo, East Peak, Level 2 shakedown of new rain gear. So he's been testing out his rain gear and getting out in the rain, which is good. So
good weekend to do that, I guess. Or every weekend's been a good weekend to do that.
Yes. So shout out to Dave Shits in the Woods. And then we've got Dave Hikes and Bikes did Mount Monadnock, which is great. And then we've got Laura Ailey did a quick hike to Lonesome Lake and then a dip. She swam in Lonesome Lake. That's impressive because it's cold.
Yeah, I'm like cold plunge. I'm like, I saw that. I was like, whoo. Cold just thinking about that.
And then we've got me and the Mastiff, Wally the dog, up Mount Belknap for 6 out of 12 of the Belknap range. So, and this is a little bit of I thought Wally was the Mastiff, but I did some internet research and it turns out Wally is a boxer. And I think the deal is that the owner has an older Mastiff that I forget the name of the dog, the Mastiff dog, but it's an older Mastiff, and it got its Mastiff a boxer puppy named Wally, and Wally has now started hiking. The Mastiff doesn't look like he has anything to do with hiking. He's like, I'm a rest on the couch type of dog, but Wally looks like trouble. So they got to get him out and burning some energy. But shout out to Wally for making his way through the Belknaps.
I've also learned that if you basically tag SLASR and you have a dog in your post, Mike's probably going to go find out everything about the dog situation.
I'll do research.
Who the dog's names are and all of this. He's keeping an encyclopedia, I think, of dog hikers and the whites and their accomplishments.
I do. I like the dogs, and it seems like and I had some beef with the boxers because I said the boxers were problematic, but then me and Miles the dog squashed that beef, and now I'm friends with Wally. But I'm a friend to the boxers now. So shout out to all of them. And Nick, what do you think? Who's going to be the notable hiker of the week?
Let's see. I mean, I can't pick Dave. More specifically Dave Shits. I think I'm going to pick that friggin' hiker who might have been a notable before. But this one hit me a little bit because we actually sort of did that like in the winter. And I thought that was kind of an interesting area and quite steep, actually, going up the other side of Hale. I guess it's not like the other side going up Hale Brook isn't steep, but that was kind of an interesting trail, weaving up back by Zealand Hut and coming out it the back way.
Yep. Good for and that friggin' hiker is always liking our posts. So I think you're halfway through, and congratulations.
Big congrats.
And there was much rejoicing.
Excellent. So if you want to get in on the notable hiker, just tag SLASR on Instagram, and we will we'll add you to the list. And now, Nick, we are going to go into our segment of the week with Dr. Tim Warren. I got a chance to sit down with Dr. Tim, talk about all kinds of interesting stuff here, Mount Everest, and then health and longevity, and then his trip to Nepal. So let's dump into that, and then we'll come out on the other side.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Boop.
It's time for SLASR's Guest of the Week. Very cool. Very cool.
All right, Tim, we're live now. Anything you say can be held against you. You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Excellent. So welcome, Tim Warren. So you're a listener to the show, Tim, and we had made contact, and we want to talk to you a little bit today about a number of topics. You just came back from Nepal, so I'm excited to talk to you about that. But by way of introduction, so Tim is with us. He's an experienced White Mountains hiker. He's summited Mount Everest, and then 4 of the 7 highest points. 5, really. Wow. What do you have left?
I have Antarctica and Europe.
Okay.
But Europe is definitely not going to happen because that's in Russia, Mount Everest. So I am not going to Russia.
Oh, yeah, that's shut down right now. That's.
I would say that's probably going to be shut down for 10 years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But so you've summited. You're like a high mountaineer person, and then you're a certified health coach focusing on helping others to increase lifespan. Healthspan centered around hiking, cross training, nutrition, and headspace. We had another gentleman, Martin Pisani, on, who's a friend of the show. He talks a lot about sort of longevity and the way that he terms it as like hiking is one of the fountains of youth, where you can really focus on longevity and long term health. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But I guess, Tim, why don't you start off if you could just introduce yourself from your perspective and maybe talk a little bit about your early life and how you got into outdoor activities, and then I want to get right into your adventures in Nepal.
Sure, yeah. My name's Tim Warren, otherwise known as Dr. Tim Warren. I've written a couple of books by that title.
Yep.
My former profession, my main profession, was as a chiropractor for many years. My own back started to hurt after 25 years, so I did sell that business. And since that time, I've been, it's an easy segue into longevity and health, nutrition, wellness, headspace from being a chiropractor for all those years. Mm-hmm. And I got into chiropractic at an early age. I was a runner through junior high and high school. This is in the 70s. I was inspired by the 1972 Olympics when Frank Shorter won the Olympic marathon. That just kind of started the whole running boom. And I was going into the 7th grade at the time, so that was a very fascinating time. And I was like, I'm going to go out for cross country. And we had some pretty cool folks on the team, people I'm still friends with here in Southern Rhode Island. And we had a pretty good team, and we ran a lot. We ran too much. I ran my first marathon when I was 16 years old, which was not bright because I got a stress fracture in my tibia and kind of missed my senior year of any kind of competition at that stage. But it was a lot of fun. I always had that mindset of endurance was my thing, just seeing how the human mind could stretch, the human body could stretch and do more than you thought it could do. That was always an inspiration for me. And my parents are they're still with us. They're 92 and 91. We're very adventurous. And we had a very pivotal camping trip in 1975. We decided, my dad was a school teacher and he built solar homes. My mom was a part-time registered nurse. And we always, on every vacation, we were doing camping and hiking in Maine and New Hampshire. But in 1975, we took a cross-country trip. There was 3 of us kids. We had a Dodge Club cab with a cap on the back, and we drove all the way across the country and hit as many national parks as we could. But our main objective was the Grand Canyon, and we were waiting for my little sister to turn 12 years of age, because at the time, that's how old you had to be to go rim to rim in the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
So that's why we're in 1975, and we did that in July. Really, kind of learned on the fly about hydration and about serious hikes like that. And but it was
I just picture your 12-year-old sister just like going in the July in the rim to rim. That's impressive.
Yeah, and we really had a challenge on the way out. Going out the North Rim, which is a lot cooler. The North Rim is 1,000 feet higher than the South Rim, so it's way hotter. The hottest is at the bottom, of course, and then the South Rim. But when you get to the North Rim, in the summer it can be in the low 40s at night, and we had a heck of a time pulling out of there. My dad barely made it out on the North Rim, so
wow.
We had an adventure, and that was awesome. And from then on, I was really all in on adventure and adventure travel, even at a young age.
Got it. And then when did you were camping and hiking in the Whites with your parents when you were younger, but when did you really get deep into, I had a similar background as far as like the running, and, I was focused on like, I'm going to run a Boston qualifying time. And when I would train for speed, inevitably I would get an overuse injury, whether it was Achilles tendonitis, IT band, just endless stuff. When I would get, my miles went over 45 miles a week, 50 miles a week, and then that was it. I would break down. So that's how I found hiking as well. But can you talk a little bit about how you, I guess, transition from endurance running to endurance mountaineering and hiking?
Well, I got really slow in my 30s with running. And like you, I was trying to qualify for Boston, which I never did. Back in the 70s and the early 80s, when I was doing training for marathons, my qualifying time was 2:50 back then. And my best was 2:53, which I was quite happy with, and I'm very proud of that to this day.
Yeah.
But it didn't get me to Boston at my age group. So, and then I just got slower and slower, and I went into triathlons in the late 80s and the early 90s, but I swam like a stone. And then I read this book, Into Thin Air, by John Krakauer. Mm-hmm. And most sane people who read Into Thin Air are like, wow, that's an awesome book, and Krakauer is a great author. I would never do that. And then there's a small percentage of psychopaths like myself who are like, wow, I want to know more about this. So I started to take higher guides in the White Mountains. I'd already summited Washington a million times in the summer. That was no longer fun. But I wanted to do it in the wintertime. And so I hired guides the first 2 or 3 times, and which was really great because they give you a whole seminar on layering and equipment and mountain weather and self-arrest and using crampons and different techniques of being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And I loved that. And from there, after doing that a bunch of times in the White Mountains, I heard that Mount Rainier had a great seminar. So I went out to Mount Rainier for a 6-day seminar where they guide you up the mountain. And each day they gave a seminar and some, again, mountain weather, tying knots, moving efficiently in the mountains, glacier travel, ice climbing, that such a thing. It was awesome. And it was on that 6-day climb of Mount Rainier that I said, I'm going to try to do one big mountain a year. And so the next year I went to Kilimanjaro in Africa, which is a glorified hike, but it still was high altitude. And it was my first brush with altitude sickness, which, you ever been altitude sick, Mike?
No, I haven't. I'm going to Hawaii, so I'm going to test it out on, I was at Mauna Lea, so maybe I might see how I do. So.
Yeah, super. Kili is 19,340. And there was one day where my partner and we were with a guided group, and my buddy came from Rhode Island, and we just didn't drink enough water that day, and we both were sick as dogs. And the way I describe altitude sickness is kind of being on a treadmill jacked up to the max while breathing through a straw and having the worst hangover of your life and the flu, and you have a railroad spike jammed into your temple. Put all those together.
Does it come on like right away, Tim, or is it no? So you can catch it.
It's a slow, insidious kind of reaches behind you and grabs you from behind kind of thing.
Okay.
So there's a number. Primarily the ways to alleviate it are to go slow. To the old adage is climb high, sleep low. So for example, on the Nepal track. We were going to base camp, and we were also doing some trekking into the Gokyo region. And the first day, you fly you start the hike at 9,000 feet in a little village called Lukla, and then you actually descend to 8,400 square feet, and you sleep there. So you stimulate your body to produce more red blood cells at 9,000 feet, and then you actually sleep a little bit lower down. And the problem is that the next day you have to go up to 11,000 feet, and then we have a rest day, maybe 2 rest days after that. But again, it's that slow, gradual. You never want to really ascend more than 1,000 or 1,500 feet in a day without having a rest day.
All right. Well, I'm assuming you got through Kilimanjaro. You managed to summit that time, or did you have? You did.
I did summit it, but I was sick as a dog. Took the medication Diamox. I'm not sure if you've heard about that. That was my first time being sick, but I had a miraculous, not everybody has a miraculous response to Diamox, but it worked for me. I felt great in a half an hour. My friend didn't fare so well. He just kept throwing up. He couldn't keep the Diamox down, and he had to go down. He did not summit Kilimanjaro.
Got it. And then, so I'm trying to think back. So it's a very similar parallel story. I did the running, I did the triathlon stuff. I read Into Thin Air. Into Thin Air, I think, tells the story of the 1996 season, if I'm correct. And then that book must have came out in what, like 98 or something like that, 97? So then you read that, you're one of the crazy few that's actually like, you know what, this isn't, I had the same thing. I was like, I'm inspired. I'm going to climb Mount Everest. And then I started to, I'm a little younger than you, and I've got, my life situation with my kids younger wasn't as easy for me, and that, time has now passed me by. But I'm assuming that, it was in your mind, but at what point did it get really serious? Like the early 2000s, where you were like, I've done enough where I could actually realistically try this?
Yeah, I did. Now, when I read Into Thin Air, I did not say, "Oh, I'm going to climb Mount Everest."
Okay.
But I was interested in climbing, so I was learning things, and I had no designs on Mount Everest. But again, on Mount Rainier, I decided to climb a big mountain every year, so Kilimanjaro. And then in 2000, I did a first attempt on Denali. Didn't make that. Was with a big guided group of 12 folks, and we just had weather problems. We were stuck for 6 days at high camp, and we got pretty exhausted after that, and got stuck at base camp for another 6 days. So that was like a 4.5 week expedition, and it didn't work out. Knew I was going to go back. So, and then after that, I spent a couple of years in the rock climbing in Yosemite. And again, I'm still a chiropractor now, so I just am just trying to get little bits of time in a way. And I had a family, and actually, by that time, I was divorced. Big surprise there. So I had a business and a family back home that I had to take care of too. But I was breaking away and saving all my vacation time and going on expeditions. That was my thing.
Yeah,
I was all in, just like I wasn't running in high school and college. Then it was a couple of years in the early 2000s in the Teton range. Rock climbing, there's some snow climbing. Even in June, when you're on the Grand Teton, there's a fair amount of snow. So it's winter conditions up there even in June.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Denali in 2004.
Okay.
And it was just myself and my buddy Rob from New Hampshire. He and I were teammates on the big guided climb 4 years earlier, and we'd done a bunch of stuff together. And we had a team of 4 to go to Denali. 2 of them dropped out, and we were going to bag the trip because it's not really safe on Denali because you're roped from step 1 till you're back in base camp. All the way up to the summit, you're roped. That's the safest way to travel on Denali, which is like, kind of like Mount Rainier is. Rainier is like a mini Denali, so it's great training for Denali. But on that second Denali, when Rob and I got to the top after 2.5 weeks of expedition, had a great experience, got up and down efficiently, had great adventures on the way, weathered all that. And I thought at the top of Denali, maybe I have the stuff for Everest. I didn't know for sure. I knew I had to get higher than Denali. Denali's 20,320 feet. So then I went to Aconcagua in Argentina the next year, which is 7,000 meters. And I did really well there. I had a great, strong summit day. So I thought, pretty cool. And then I went to Everest, and I realized I was not ready for Everest, mentally or physically. I didn't train correctly. And when you're, sick a lot, the Himalaya is hard to stay healthy in. But
so and it's funny you say, like, we had a guest on that they talked about how they were going to just do the trek to base camp, and I think she said within like a day or two, you can't account for everything. Like I think she got food illness or something, and she was done after a day or two.
It's very common. It's just a tough place to stay healthy.
Yeah. So 2007 was your first attempt on Everest.
Yeah, 2007.
Did you go by yourself? Did you take a friend? How did you go about picking what guide service you're going to go to?
I use IMG for international trips. They're out of Seattle. I, kind of met some of the guys when they're kind of affiliated with RMI, Rainier Mountaineering Associated, but IMG is more international. I had some friends that were guides in that group, and I went with them to Kilimanjaro and went with RMI to Denali, and then we went self-guided on Denali the second time. But I loved IMG. I thought they were awesome, and so I went with them. They had kind of a self-guided program. You have to have, be joined up with a Sherpa. And also I went out there with a climbing partner, my buddy Al from Alberta, Canada. He and I met on Aconcagua in Argentina. And so we kind of had a mini team there, but I got sick. And then, so he had to go off on his own, and Al and his Sherpa eventually summited. And the highest that I got with my Sherpa partner, Pinjo Sherpa, was Camp 3 at 24,500 feet. That was my high point.
Do you remember going through the Khumbu ice field the first time? Was it as like epic as, in my mind, that to me is like, wow, you've really made it and you're on the mountain. But do you recall what that was like?
Yeah. I mean, I went through the ice fall 20 times, 10 up and 10 down.
Okay.
Because you have so many rotations that you go, and I was there 2 years in a row, and, I did everything right to the end. Weirdly, it should have been more terrifying than it was, because it's terrifying, and it's the second most dangerous area on Mount Everest to the south. Usually 56% of the deaths on Mount Everest come from people who get to the top and then they die coming down from the top.
Right.
But a goodly portion of people have injuries and accidents, and there's a lot of fatalities in the Khumbu icefall. It's a tumbling river of broken ice that some of the ice might be as big as a refrigerator, and some of them are as big as an apartment building. And the whole thing moves about 4 feet a day. So you want to travel in the morning as possible. So we would get up and have our little puja Buddhist ceremony at 3 a.m, and then get to Crampon Point, where we would load up for the day's climb at 3 a.m. And then would try to get to Camp 1, where the terrain evens out. And there's still a lot of monster crevasses up at Camp 1, between Camp 1 and Camp 2. But the danger of the ice fall is lessened at that particular stage. Nothing's moving as much when you get up to Camp 1, is about 20,000 feet. So,
and like you said, you've got to go up, and you're going up to Camp 1 and coming back down through the ice field and going back to base camp, and then eventually up to Camp 2 and then down. And it's just a lot of up and down, right?
It's a lot of up and down. You're like Camp 2 is advanced base camp. It's about 21,500 feet. You spend a lot of time up there acclimatizing for the higher camps.
Yeah, I think probably for the listeners' sake too, we should probably touch a little bit on, like, people always talk about like, oh, it's so crazy and crowded in Everest, and people may not understand this that are listening, but there's a small window of a climbing season in the high summits, and I think it's generally like a couple of weeks in May, and then maybe there's a small window in September, but otherwise there's a jet stream that opens, I think it goes farther north for a small period of time in May, and that's the reason why there's such a crowd there, right? Is that you've only got like a couple of weeks, and before that the Sherpas have to set everything up, and then it's just this big rush to the summit, right?
Yeah, there's between 4 and 10 days on average of good weather in late May. I summited in 2008 on May 24th.
Oh, wow.
Sir Edmund Hillary was the first guy that climbed, and he climbed in May 29th. Some of the Sherpas sometimes hit a weather window and they climb in late April and can get to the top and down. But most everybody else, it's mid to late May.
Yeah, so that explains basically why there's such a crowd there. But people don't understand that, I don't think. The normal layperson that doesn't pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah, and like in my day, though, we had nothing like the conga lines of people that are up there on the mountain right now. Like on May 24th, when I summited, there was 20 people the whole day that were going for the summit. We did have a little hassle when we got above the Hillary Step, and when you get above the Hillary Step, it's about 45 minutes of easy snow slope to the summit. But then coming down, we ran into a bunch of people, and we had a hard time getting around people on the way down. And that was with only 20 people on the entire mountain in that 24 period of time.
Yeah, I want to definitely talk about that. But I guess one other question I had for you before we get into like the specifics of summiting is, at that time, so it's funny, running has their running booms, and I feel like mountaineering has their mountaineering booms. So like Into Thin Air in the late 90s was one of those booms, but around the time that you went the 07 and 08 seasons, that was the same time that the Discovery Channel was filming I think they did 3 or 4 seasons where they would follow a couple of guide services and film there. So I'm assuming you were probably there one or more of those seasons where they were filming, right?
Yeah, except they were on the Tibet side of the mountain.
Oh, okay.
I was on the Nepal side. They were on the Nepal side in 2009, the year after I summited.
Okay.
Before that, and I knew, actually, did you see the whole series? Did you like?
Oh yeah, I've watched it multiple times. Yeah.
Remember the big motorcycle guy, Big Tim?
Oh, yeah. He was that the guy that dated Cher at one point, I think.
He did date Cher.
Yes.
And I reached out to him. I said, I want to be invited to the wedding. He never got back. But yes, I don't know what happened to him, but he was what a character.
Right.
I met he was on our team in Aconcagua in 2006, and what a character. I'm not going to say he's a good climbing partner because he's not, but he's a very entertaining human being.
All right, so this is interesting. So I and again, I've watched the show multiple times. My impression was that people that were watching that show would look at your friend and say like, "Oh, anyone can do this if he can do it." Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing or what this deal is. I don't know the culture in Everest. Like, it's definitely getting more crowded. My theory is that it's probably more about it's getting more accessible to not just Westerners, but like there's other, there's a ton of India and other regions. Maybe that's probably more of a reason, but I don't know what your take is.
Well, my take is things changed a little bit. In my day, it was a little bit more of the Western outfitters who were running the show there. And rightly so. You need to release some of the management and have some of the Nepalese local groups have ownership of their mountain. So I get that. But the downside of that is that the standards of Western big mountain climbing are a bit higher still. So there's a lag time between some of the local companies. I'm not saying all the local Sherpa and Nepali guide groups are not good, but a lot of them are not good. It's easy to determine, like there's some that have had great success. Seven Summits Trek's really awesome company. There's a whole bunch of them. But there's also a bunch of fly-by-nights, and their requirements for getting a climber on the team from India or China, these are kind of like people that are recently have the money to do such a thing, are non-existent. So there's really there. If you've got the money, you slap the money down. It's inexpensive. They're taking you, and if there's trouble on the mountain, you're on your own, kind of thing. So unfortunately, there is some problems on Everest. Every year, the Kingdom of Nepal tries to kind of change some rules and make it a little safer. But so far, there's still problems on Everest.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So that lines up with what I suspected. But so Tim, just going back to your experience, and so 2007, you made it up to Camp 3, but you ultimately, was it injury? Was it altitude sickness? What was the deciding factor for you?
And a throat infection, and then I came down to base camp, and then I decided to try to heal up. I would go way low down valley, which a lot of people do. If you can lose some altitude, you're going to have a better chance to heal up. However, then I picked up a GI bug down there, which is always the risk. So I was in trouble. I was weak. Therefore, after you have a GI bug, you're kind of weak. And so I had the lung infection, the throat infection, and I was weak from the GI bug. And I made a half-hearted attempt to summit. And Pinjo and I got into the ice fall, and he said, "Man, you're really slow." And I wasn't ready to quit there, but about 50 feet beyond there, I was like, listen, Pinjo just told me that I'm slow. So what he's trying to be polite with is telling me, we're not going to make it.
Yeah, this isn't your day.
And I wasn't about to have anybody else rescue me. I wasn't going to put anybody else at risk. So as soon as I had that, it was really 50 feet beyond when he mentioned that we were slow. I said, Pinjo, let's cut the cord. This is it. And we both had a good cry on the mountain, both of us. And we turned around and left. And I never wanted to see another mountain for as long as I lived. That was my attitude when I left base camp. And then the next day, because it takes 3 days to hike out to get a plane to go back to Kathmandu. So the first day after leaving base camp, I was like, I never want to see another mountain the rest of my life. I hate this. This is stupid. I wasted all my money. This is ridiculous. And then the next day, I was thinking, but if I change my training, and if I change this, and if I change that, then maybe, just maybe. And then the third day, I was 100% all in. I am totally coming back. I'm going to change this, and this. and I'm going to give it my best go, because I knew that I had not given it my best shot. I knew I could do better. Didn't know if I could get to the top, because a million things can go wrong, but I knew that I needed to give it my best go.
Do you think that you had enough failures, even if they were on a small scale, where you were prepared you were more prepared to turn around than the average person? Or, again, I don't know all the people that die in Everest, if they're more likely to have less experience or they're more risk tolerant or not. But what's your take on your willingness to turn around when you got that hint from your team?
I have never felt bad about turning around, because it's another opportunity to go back. And I turned around on Denali. I knew I was going to go back. Turned around on the Grand Teton. Happy to go back. I never have a problem with that. But it didn't occur to me, so that's why it was important for me to listen to Pinjo, who, by the way, I just visited him in his village. He lives in this beautiful, picturesque village in Fort C, about 13,000 feet in the Khumbu. And he's summited 10 times in his career. And then his family made him stop, which is smart. 10 times is enough. And my wife and I had an awesome little, we had some tea and some conversation. And I've seen him many times over the years. And he's got a great laugh, and he's got a great attitude, and he's living his best life.
Yeah, that's great. We'll talk a little bit about your recent trip to Nepal. I want to hear about this. So there's a spoiler. There's helicopter extractions involved in this one, so I'm excited about that. But so then you go. So you basically you it's not cheap to do these expeditions. So you collected all your nickels and dimes and were able to scrape up more money. Did they give you a discount to come back for round two, or they say the price has gone up?
In 2008, as they did in 2007, which was awesome.
Okay,
and they didn't charge me for an extra bottle of oxygen, which was $1,000, but and also I had very good sponsors. The first year I was sponsored by Verizon, not Verizon Wireless, but I was doing a lot of lecturing in schools, a lot of talks in schools, and that attracted the attention of the nonprofit wing of Verizon. Mm-hmm. And we were doing shows all over the country. I was giving radio dispatches through very rudimentary satellite phone type, PDA type equipment from base camp, and doing radio shows across the country for kids where the schools signed up for the Verizon dispatches, which was fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. And inspiring kids that maybe would have otherwise never thought about mountaineering.
Yeah, and we were raising funds for A Wish Come True, which is a local organization, kind of like a wish giving organization for sick children. So we raised a bunch of money for that, and there was a lot of other small companies and individuals that sponsored me. But then when I didn't make it in 2007, some of the sponsorship went away because people, companies don't understand, well, why did you do it, kind of thing.
Yeah. I want to put my bet behind a horse that's going to win here, but they don't understand coming off the mountain alive is the win. So
exactly, having a pulse in your fingers and toes,
right,
is awesome.
Right. So, but anyway, you going back in 2008, I'm assuming you had a pep in your step. You were like, I got this. I know what I'm going to do here. Was it a lot easier than 2007, or was there still adversity there?
Still completely a miserable experience. Mm-hmm. It's a miserable experience. But the thing is, I knew I would appreciate it for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But there's no part of it that's enjoyable. I mean, you can have some good people on your team, and you can have some good meals and some good camaraderie at base camp, but the climbing is miserable, and the mental duress, like most big endeavors, like running a marathon or something, it's as much of a mental battle as it is a physical battle. And the physical is incredibly painful. I kind of, to put that in perspective, maybe running like 3 marathons in a row, kind of pain. But the mental duress is incredible, and it's hard to describe. But being in a tent by yourself, staring at the ceiling with like a raging storm going over you at Camp 2, and all the doubts and fears that you have. Maybe people have died on the mountain. Maybe climbers that are better than you have failed. So all that gets into your head, and when you're alone on the mountain, it's a hard battle mentally. So there's an incredible physical and mental duress, and the whole thing is miserable. But again, it was my decision, and I knew I would appreciate it the rest of my life. And I've never been not glad that I did it, but it's miserable at the time.
Yeah. How does it must be like the gossip train must run like crazy. Like, oh, I heard this person got injured, or there's fatalities there too. So you hear about people dying. It must be like very odd to hear people come back into base camp and you hear these stories, and, you work up all these fears in your head over it, I guess.
Yeah. Consciously, you're in denial. Like, okay, that happened to that person. It's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
But subconsciously, you know that it's a crapshoot. It's it could happen to you. Why shouldn't it happen to you?
Yeah.
And again, there's objective hazard and there's subjective hazard. I was pretty confident that I wasn't going to make any subjective problems and mistakes unless I was my brain was gone with high altitude cerebral edema. You're familiar with the two things that can kill you over there are HACE and HAPE. Where your brain swells, that's high altitude cerebral edema. It's like being drunk. You lose mental faculty. You lose your body awareness, your proprioception, your body's awareness of where you are in space. So it's easy to die when you have HACE. It'll kill you quickly.
Yep.
And then there's HAPE, which is high altitude pulmonary edema, where your lungs swell. These are all altitude related injuries, and that's when you just can completely have zero energy. You literally cannot take one or two steps, and you're drowning in your own lungs. Both of those will kill you fast up there.
Wow. And then, so the other thing that I found interesting, I was watching some videos. I think you were interviewed somewhere. I can't remember, but I was doing some homework ahead of time. And you were talking about, and I think about this too, and I've read this before, is like sort of the best laid plans, even though you might have a plan to go with like your team members and you're gonna tent up with somebody, like by the time you get to Camp 4, like those plans can sometimes be drastically altered based on people turning back into decisions of your hiking team. So that happened to you, right? You ended up summiting with people that you weren't familiar with.
Well, no, I had met them. Like we had our IMG team. I think we started with 22 Western climbers and the same amount of Sherpas.
Yeah.
And I think maybe 7 people or 8 of those Westerners summited. And a lot of the Sherpas summited. But you never knew who was going to be left and going for it at the same time.
Right.
I knew that I wanted to kind of wait towards the end of the season. I didn't want to get in the conga line. I didn't want to get into go for it as soon as possible. That's the tendency for a lot of people because they've been there for so long. They've been there for 2.5 months kind of thing, and just want to get there and get it done. But I just wanted to. One of the things I learned from 07 was just wait a few days, let the vast majority of the people go for it, and clear off the mountain, hit that second weather window, and that worked for me.
So you were pretty confident there'd be another window based on the probabilities.
Yeah, there was a window. And again, summited on May 24th, which it all worked out fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. What do you remember when you got to Hillary Step?
I can't say that it felt like it was really difficult climbing. I knew I was at that stage. I knew I was going to get to the top. I was feeling pretty good. We went for the summit from Camp 4 at 8,000 meters at about 8:20 in the evening. And so we climbed all night with headlamps, and that was surreal because, pitch black, your whole world exists in the beam of your headlamp on the snow and ice. And occasionally there was people around, and then there was nobody around. And it was just fascinating. And then I remember on the way up, noticing, there's a dead body there. And then a little while later, there's another dead body. And a little while later, there's another dead body. But I didn't think about it. It was like, I just noted it.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the beam to go to the summit. So it was a strange mental focus. On the way down, it really bothered me because when I came down, it was day. And I was pretty sure I was going to survive down to Camp 4. And it bothered me that these fellow climbers, and I can remember one of them, he looked like he sat down and probably fell asleep and then fell backwards. And he's been frozen there for 6 or 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
It bothered me.
when you're coming down and you're seeing, and you had a little bit of a traffic jam on the Hillary Step where you guys just had to eventually plow through some hikers that were not making their way through. I'm assuming that in that condition, like, you don't have the luxury to say, like, I'm going to keep an eye out for other people, and you can do some things to help them, but there's very limited things that you can do to help somebody that's in distress.
There's limited things. And again, if I was beyond saving, if I was not conscious, if I was fighting people that were trying to help me, as sometimes it happens up there, if I was beyond saving, then I want you to leave me. I do not want anybody to risk their life to save me. I'm fully prepared to die up there if I'm not capable of going on. Unfortunately, you've probably read that there's a lot of gray areas there, and if people who are non-climbers are not of the same mind. Why didn't you save this guy? You stepped over him and went to the summit. Well, I wouldn't want anybody to put themselves at risk if I was unsavable personally, and that was my feeling with others too. Nobody needed saving when I was up there. There was people that were acting erratically, and I was shocked that some of these people kept going, because they were to me, they were comatose, standing on the rope. And that's why finally Pinjo and I had to we were waiting, we were burning oxygen, and we just had to pass and go by them.
Who took the lead on that? Was it you or Pinjo that said, let's go?
It was Pinjo. I could tell. I mean, we really couldn't converse because we have oxygen masks. He didn't say anything to me, but just by the way he was acting, I could tell he was going to push by and he was going to go for it. The problem was it was very unsafe climbing by Pinjo and I. We had to detach from the rope, and I can remember on a couple of occasions I just grabbed a bunch of old dead ropes and swung down Tarzan style to get by these people. And you know what? I still have nightmares about that. I still have nightmares about that unsafe climbing that I did up there, but I survived it. But we had to get by those people. It was becoming a major problem. We were burning oxygen, but it all went great. Once we got by the log jam at the Hillary Step, and to answer your previous question, I didn't think technically it was that difficult, but we were on the beam. We were just climbing awesome. We were on it, so it didn't feel technically insurmountable at all. I wasn't afraid at all at that stage.
What is the summit like? How big is it?
Might be as big as a table, might be as big as a love seat, the actual top. It's not like the movie Everest, which I thought was a very good movie anyway. You've probably seen that.
Yep.
They had to come to a point. It's not a point. I mean, there was a couple of Russian oxygen bottles stuck in the snow, and there was a bunch of prayer flags, and there was a framed copy of a picture of the Dalai Lama, which the Sherpas leave. Mm-hmm. And other than that, one thing I wanted to do up there was I wanted to do a 360-degree panoramic around. I forgot to do it. I wanted to look down to the north side, where that's the other climbing route that comes up from the Tibet side. Forgot to do it. But I was really nervous about my camera. It was half of it was encased in ice because my oxygen mask had dripped saliva into the pocket where in my down one-piece suit, and I was worried that the camera wasn't going to work, but it did. It did. It was it kind of distracted me.
All that work, and you could have just hiked Chikora in the winter to get the same experience.
And you know what? I love Chikora.
Right, me too.
Chikora is an awesome mountain.
Awesome.
And
that's a great one.
Again, I'm really lucky to be all over the world and have a lot of great international experiences. But you could spend your entire life in the White Mountains and never be bored. I wouldn't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we talk about that a fair amount on the show about there's even this week I covered it earlier, but Frankenstein Cliff, I hadn't done that, and I didn't see a single person, and who would have thought, it's a 4-mile hike, and I felt like I was in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't see anybody until I got to Arethusa Falls. So yeah, there's a million things in New Hampshire, which is great.
Yeah. And I love the winter. I prefer the winter in most times. It never appealed to me to do the 4,000ers. My wife's done the 4,000ers, and I've done a bunch with her. It was just, for some reason, it just never resonated with me for a list. I mean, the list that I am working on is the state high points. I've got 44 of the 50, which I'm proud of.
Right. Yeah, because you got the big one. So.
No, I got the big one, and I've got the set, Rainier, and I'm looking for Whitney, Mount Hood. I've not been to Hawaii yet.
Okay, so you got some good ones then.
Oh, yeah. And what's really, really tough is Montana and Wyoming. I've done the Grand Teton, but the Grand Teton is like 50 feet shorter than than Gannett Peak, which is the true summit in the Wind River Range. And we got stuffed when we were in Gannett, and we got stuffed when we were in Granite in Montana. Granite was really difficult, and we didn't get to the top on either of those.
Wow. So that's a region I haven't really been out to. I've been to Yosemite and in the Snoqualmies and stuff, but I haven't been to the Tetons in that area. So and you have to worry about grizzly bears in those locations, right? Yeah,
we're stressing out. We did, we saw some from a distance in Yellowstone, but we were on the high alert on both Gannett and Granite. Which are the high points of Montana and Wyoming. We were stressing about it, but we had no issues. We had a lot of other issues.
Wow. Well,
route finding was very, very difficult. We went in July. It's July. That's got to be okay. And really, it's not a good time to attempt those two mountains. We should have gone in September and August.
Yeah. Well, we may have to have you on for round 2 of the state high points. But I did want to ask you one more question about Everest, and then we'll get to Nepal. But just coming back down, at what point do you feel like you can do a victory lap? Is it like, all right, I've made it down to Camp 4 and it's smooth sailing, or do you wait till you get through the ice field and get to base camp?
My mantra the second year was summit and safe return. And so I didn't want to be one of those guys that gets to the top and lets his guard down psychologically, and then croaks on the way down. I wasn't doing that. So my thing was, I'm not celebrating until I get into base camp, because again, the ice fall can kill you anytime it wants. So I didn't take the eye off the ball until I walked into base camp. So and my second year, because I had such a mental battle the first year. One of the things I did to prepare the second year was I studied every sports psychology book that I could get my hands on. And all of those, I just compiled all those, and they all pretty much boiled down to one word, which is what I was not able to do in 2007, and that is visualization. Like in 2007, try as I could never visualize myself summiting and safely returning in 2007. 2008, I could see myself on the summit and safely returning. So that was a huge difference for me, but one I had to beat in my head by studying all that sports psychology.
Is the boiling it down to just having that vision? To me, that sounds like it's like you need to do the work to build the confidence to know within your inner self that you can achieve what you want to achieve. And I'm surprised that you didn't have that in 2007, given your past accomplishments.
I did not. I think I read too many books, and I had too much innate fear that was generated from that. And I had a good attitude going into it, but I couldn't do the visualization was not there. My adage in 2007 was I want to have the best equipment, the best training, and the best mindset, but my mindset was lacking in 2007. Luckily, I got it back in 2008. Didn't know if it was going to get me to the top or not, but luckily it all worked out and I did, because as you know, 1,000 things can go wrong.
Well, have you the drive for the accomplishments? It doesn't go. I don't think it ever goes away. But for me, like I'll just use the White Mountains as an example. I am a list person, like the 4,000 footers, the 52 with the views. I've done the winter 4,000 footers, and now I'm at the point where I'm like, I get more joy in going with other people to help them along on their journey, which I got a feeling you're going to answer similar. We're like twins, I think, a little bit in some of these things, although I'm not at the scale of mountaineering, but I think that I've transitioned over to sort of get my focus more on the relationships and, getting my daughter to finish her 4,000 foot. Did you evolve, or are you still that the driven person that needs to do a more difficult accomplishment now.
Absolutely not. I'm definitely more about the experience, and we're also one of my things that my wife and I wanted to do, and we finally did it last year, was the Camino de Santiago in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that?
Oh, yes.
That's been on our goal list for 25 years. And we went in 2023, and sadly we were 9 days in, and my wife walked off a curb and broke her little bone in her foot. So we had to very sadly stop our Camino that year. But we went back in last year and did the whole 6 weeks. And that's cushy. You're backpacking the whole thing. But you're only carrying 18 pounds or something, and you're staying in lodges and Airbnbs, and it's really enjoyable, and highly recommend that too. So I'm not this driven, crazy person on the list anymore. I want to use my body as long as I can, and but I want to enjoy and see some awesome places and go to different countries and eat great food and have great wine and really enjoy hiking in the meantime.
Yeah, and with my own family, and I say this to my kids too, and obviously financially you have to set yourself up, but I feel like focusing your time on memories and experiences is just as important as the stuff. And it sounds like you're pivoting to do that. So you did the long trek with your wife, but recently you also just came back from a longer trip to Nepal. Can you talk a little bit about the trip that you did? So you hosted a group of people that did not an Everest expedition, but the trek to base camp or trekking around Nepal, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I just kind of fell into several years ago. I think it was back in 2017. I had just finished a second book, and I just needed to get away. So by myself, I went back over to the Khumbu area of Nepal, and I was going up to base camp. I had a friend who was hiking Lhotse, so I wanted to bring him a bottle of whiskey at base camp and hang out there, and wanted to go visit my Sherpa friend Pinjo. And so I did that, but I fell into leading. I ran into this a British paratrooper who was there on vacation, and a German anesthesiologist. So I ended up guiding these guys in the Khumbu, and I really enjoyed that. I've learned a lot. I know a lot about acclimatization. I know a lot about the history. I know a lot about climbing big mountains, and I know a lot about the Everest region. I know a lot about the Sherpa folk, and I love all that about that. So I found that was really fun, and I really enjoyed that. And so I've done that since then. And this year we went over, and I always add a part of the trails that I've not been on, so I don't get bored with it. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people want to go to Everest Base Camp, and we do that. But we also did this Gokyo climb, which I had never done. And I screwed up as the guide a little bit because it was dangerous. It was objectively dangerous. Wow. We had to climb a hike through kind of not an ice, well, it's hard to describe, but it's a lot of busted ice and rock glacier. That's a glacier that's coming off Cho-Oyu mountain. It's one of the highest mountains in the world. And it takes it took us probably 2.5 hours to get through it. And we had 3 members of the group that were a little weaker, less experienced. And we had a whole bunch of people who were very experienced. We had 12 of us total.
Okay.
It was dangerous, and it scared me. And I didn't realize it was that dangerous. So I kind of screwed that up a little bit. And we had 2 people that had left with illness early in the trip, and then I had 3 family members of mine that I wanted to bring over, so they came over, and I also coach people in the training and acclimatization and staying healthy over there. But I start 6 months in advance with Zoom coaching on everybody. But family being family, sometimes they don't listen or remember, or they kind of tune that out. That's not really for me. And so the 3 family members actually were not hydrating. They weren't taking care of themselves as well. And I had to send them out on a helicopter, all 3 of them. And so we were down to 7 people out of 12. My wife is strong. She's a complete stud hiker. So she was there, and we had a bunch of other really strong people left. And so this was a 16-day trek. So it was really hard, really long, really tough, but we were all good. And we got to 5 miles before the end of the entire 16 days, and my left leg started to swell up, and it was so painful I couldn't take another step.
Wow. What was happening with it?
It turns out on the trip, on the plane ride over to Nepal, I got 3 blood clots in the calf.
Wow.
Normally what I do is I take a sleeping pill so I can sleep on a long flight. Mistake. That's what I've always done. But that first pull was like 13 hours on the plane to Doha, Qatar, and then it's another 4 or 5 hours to Kathmandu. And evidently, even though we were using support hose to prevent clots, I got a blood clot, but no symptoms until the very, very end.
Wow.
I knew what it was, and I was like, this is life-threatening, and I need to get a rescue. And so 5 miles from finishing the whole thing, here I am, the leader of the group, Mr. Stud Climber from Everest, and I had to take a pony ride because there was no place for the helicopter to land. So I had to jump on a pony, and this pony was about the same size as I was. I didn't know if I was going to have to carry the pony. But so I had to ride this pony for a mile or two to get to a place where the helicopter could land and whisk me off to Kathmandu.
Now, how does it work? Do you, when you're on an expedition like this, so you've got like a dozen people, do you have a helicopter service on standby just in case something goes down? I'm assuming it's relatively common for Westerners and trekkers to need this service, but how logistically, how does it work?
Well, there's we used to have to we could only communicate with satellite phones back in the day, but now
right.
The Sherpas seem to have cell service. My phone wasn't working very well, but the Sherpa team, we have a fantastic Sherpa team. Makes me cry to think about these guys. They're so caring and awesome people, and I can't wait to see them again next year when I go back with another group. But anyway, they called the rescue, and 2 words for you right now: travel insurance.
Okay.
Travel insurance, that's something that I've always used when I'm going hiking internationally, because again, my wife broke her foot walking off a curb. That saved us over there, and it absolutely saved us over here, because the travel insurance was able to put us in business class on the way back, because I couldn't put my foot down. If I was I couldn't have traveled. I would have had to spend another month in Kathmandu just trying to get well. But they put my wife and I both on business class, and we were in the lap of luxury all the way back to Logan Airport.
Wow! So that's quite an adventure. And then, so are you planning on doing this every year? So you'll host a trip?
I'm going to do it as long as I can. I really enjoy it, and I'm putting together another group for next year. So if any of your listeners feel the pull of Nepal and they want to go with a guy that's has a lot of experience and has been to the top of the world and knows a lot about the culture and appreciates the culture and appreciates the awesome Sherpa team, then have them reach out to me, because we're getting a team together. But you really have to, you have to be an experienced backpacker and hiker. You need to how to take care of yourself, and you need to be the kind of personality that's open to listening. Because again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start coaching it 6 months in advance. We're going to have monthly Zoom or Teams meetings, and there's going to be a whole checklist for training and for acclimatization. Also, there's a lot of new developments in pre-acclimatization that we want to do our best to do.
Yeah, I was reading about that. So there was for the listeners, and I'll probably cover this in a longer story, but it was a British expedition, right? That they are doing some kind of I didn't read too much about it, but they're doing some sort of therapy with xenon gas that allows them to basically be in the UK a week before the climb, and then get there and actually summit within 5 or 6 days or something.
They were London to London in 7 days, and they summited in the middle. So it's
crazy.
Incredible, because both my expeditions were the traditional acclimatization hikes, 2.5 months to acclimatize. But yeah, these guys, again, they're paying $170,000, and it's I would think that I would be fearful because it hadn't been done before.
Right.
I'd be very fearful for my brain health with going up to those heights. And then as soon as those guys get all the press, the worldwide press, that they had done it with the xenon gas, and then some guy from New York, and I don't even think he used xenon gas, 4 days from New York City. And interestingly, I just heard today he got arrested in Kathmandu because for some reason the guy had $20,000 in cash, and you're not supposed to have all kinds of foreign currency.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy world over there. That's all I'm saying.
You would think if he had 20 grand in cash that he'd be able to bribe his way out of not getting arrested, but
you would think. You would think.
Yeah, well, it's a different world out there. So listeners, if you're interested and you want to go with somebody that's you're not going to get arrested, you go with Dr. Tim. He'll hook you up. So
exactly. Yeah.
Wow. And what else do you want to plug, Tim?
Yeah, well, I think for your listeners, the Nepal trip would be a fun adventure, and it's a 3-week thing. That's the big thing, and I'm working on the agenda right now. And actually, what's going to be cool about this trip is it's very anticlimactic going just to base camp these days because it's just a graffitied, painted rock. Mm-hmm. And you can't even see Mount Everest. The closer you get to it, you can't see Everest. We are going to get a great view of Everest by climbing this little trekking peak, Kalapatar, which is a common thing, and beautiful views. We either do that early in the morning when it's pitch black so we can watch the headlamps go up Everest, or we do it and we get beautiful pictures in the evening and we can see the alpenglow come down on Mount Everest. Best pictures I've taken are from that. But we're actually going to be spending a night in base camp and having dinner and breakfast there. So that's going to be fascinating. And most other trekkers don't get to do that because it's mainly the climbing teams that are allowed in base camp. But it's going to be cool for next year.
Are there any, I wouldn't say hidden gems, but are there any mountain villages that stand out to you? Like you get there and you're like, oh, wow, this is like out of a movie or something.
There are so many over there. I love the village of Fortsey that Pinjo, my pal Pinjo lives in. Kundi was a village that we visited for the first time here. The views of that from that village when you wake up in the morning and you get up and you have a cup of coffee and it's 5:30 in the morning, the mountains right in front of you just do not seem real. No place that I've ever seen can you get out of bed and see that mountain view, biggest mountains in the world. It just seemed fake. It just seemed like it was AI. But so that village of Kundi is awesome. For those people that are into like a spiritual bent, I love the learning a little bit more about Hinduism and Buddhism, the two major religions that are in the Kingdom of Nepal. And that's fascinating in Kathmandu. So we also have cultural tours once we're in Kathmandu because it's a fascinating place. And I enjoy mountains because I enjoy everything about it. I want to learn the culture. I want to experience the people. I want to experience the cuisine. I want everything. And that's the way I lead my trips.
Yeah, well, this is really inspiring, and I think the listeners are going to love this. And I'll try to put some links into. I'm looking at Kundi as you're talking right now, so I'll try to put some links in, and then I'll include all the details on your website and how people can get in touch with you. And then you've got a couple of books too. Do we want to buy you books?
Oh, sure. They're on Amazon. Yep. And I'm going to send you a case of them. If I was going to go up to you, and you can give them out to whoever you want to.
Yeah.
So Lessons from Everest.
That's an awesome photo.
Yep. That's my friend Dave Hahn. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dave Hahn.
No.
He's got, it's, I don't know. I love the picture there because there's a bottomless crevasse right in front of him. So there's the uncertainty of the crevasse. There's the danger, but there's the mountain in the background. So it's the draw of the mountain, but there's the danger of the big crevasse. I just love the picture. And you know what? It's a mental battle. So he's by himself. So you've got to deal with that mental battle. And you know what? I like that battle. And sometimes I win that, and sometimes I lose that. But I like the struggle. I like the battle. So a lot of people like that book. And then my other book is Feet, Fork, and Fun: How to Fail Your Way to Fitness. Both that's a lot of people have been thrilled about this book. As a matter of fact, just recently, one of my other coaching clients read this book, and she's like, hired me on the spot for some personal coaching and some life coaching and some athletic coaching. So that's an awesome book too.
Yeah. Before we close, why don't you just quickly talk about your 3 values and beliefs? Because I do think it's important for people to think about it. And I'm reaching that age, early 50s, and, the generation above me, I'm seeing my parents are getting into their early 80s at this point, and you start thinking about like, all right, I want to make sure that whatever time I have left, I have its quality, and I can function the way that I want to function. And you really do start thinking about that. And I think our audience does tend to skew a little bit older. But can you talk about just sort of the 3 values that you talk about with your clients?
Yeah, well, they stem from, again, when I titled this book "Feet, Fork, and Fun," there's 3 dimensions of human existence. There's feet, which is we need to do something to move our body. We have to move our body. Our body only works well when it's used. The people that have, more often than not, have hip replacements and knee replacements and everything replaced are people that are less active rather than more active. The human body works best if it's used. Not abused, but used. So that's the feet aspect of it. The fork aspect of it is we need to be mindful of what goes in the hopper, what we ingest. Our nutrition is very, very important. And there's simple things that, it's minimal chemicals into our system. It's minimal preservatives. It's minimum factory foods. It's more natural foods. It's what most people know, but some people just get confused or hardened, and they don't feel like they can make progress by moving their body, by nutrition. So I coach on that. But the biggest one is the fun aspect, which is the mental component, and the psychological component of putting it all together, keeping motivated, keeping inspired, keeping interested in things. If you're a reader, you keep reading books. If you're listening to podcasts, you keep listening to podcasts. Podcasts are so awesome because I learn stuff every day with time that very often, let's say if I'm mowing the grass, I love putting on a podcast in my headphones and doing mundane activities and learning something and stimulating my brain. So feet, fork, and fun is the 3 dimensions of the human existence, and we just need to utilize all 3 of those. So
it makes sense. It's simple. It's a simple perspective, but it makes so much sense.
Move well, eat well, think well. Feet, fork, and fun. Physical, chemical, and emotional.
I think that's a good way to wrap it up, Dr. Tim.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Mike. I really enjoyed being here with you.
Yeah, it's been great.
In your back there, in the back here behind your treadmill.
Yeah, that's my my racing days, but those days are over now. I collect patches now for the lists.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Which is good. But we'll definitely have to have you back on. We'll talk about the 50 high points, and then I could talk about Everest and all the, we've had Alan Arnett on before and a bunch of other, so I can talk about this before. So thanks again, Tim. And, like I said, we'll hopefully bring you back again soon.
Thanks so much. And by the way, first off, I first met Alan Arnett in the Khumbu Glacier. Going up. We just chatted right there in the Khumbu.
Wow. Did you know, oh, wow, I follow this guy. And
I was like, you're Alan Arnett. Yes, I am. And he's an awesome dude. And we just had a great conversation there right in the middle of the icefall.
Yeah. I'll link his episode. I think he was on episode 111 is in my notes here. So, and we had a Sherpa on from, in episode 151, there's a guy out of Vermont, Ongjel Sherpa, who has his own Sherpa apparel company. He's at episode 151, so I'll link those as well if people want to. So we're slowly building our library of the mountaineering stuff, and we've had Martin Pisani on as well. So it's good.
Super. Mike, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, Nick. Do you want to sign up with Dr. Tim next year, and we'll go to Nepal, and maybe we'll scout out Everest.
I like the idea of it. I like how you're mentioning wanting to I'll do Everest after reading Into Thin Air, which I think is everybody thinks it's so awesome. I'm when you start to hear the details of it, I'm I don't know. I think I'd have to have some other experiences in the mountains that would make me want to go to full blown mountaineering. There's a big gap. I was talking before this with you too, but we had Mike Cherimon who talked about Rainier, but that gap between mountaineering in in Nepal versus what we are doing in the Whites, it's massive, and the amount of experience, and I mean he was just fascinating to listen to. I really enjoyed the conversation that you two guys had, everything from his stories and and his outlook on life and kind of how he got to where he is. It was very interesting.
Yeah. I want to see if I can have him back on in the future to talk about the 50 highest and some other stuff. But yeah, it was. I feel like it's like a progression. So you do like Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, and then you do Denali, and then from there, like, okay, well, I can handle 3 weeks on a mountain. I can probably do Everest at that point, or at least I'm in the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, even, I think personally, like, I don't necessarily think of it as, like, obviously there's the training and stuff, but just the logistics of getting up there with all the equipment that you need, the oxygen and all the layers and the jackets, and the fact that you need a Sherpa to help you get up there, and the Sherpas are actually going up and laying basically ropes for the route just for that year to get up there. Like, it's amazing, all the work that goes into it. Like, it's wild. And also, I mean, there's the expense too of just going out there and doing it and having the time to do it as well.
Right. Yeah, that's the tricky part for sure. Yeah. So. But all right, so that was episode 198, Nick. So thank you for joining me, and we'll be back next week for episode 199, and soon enough we will be at 200.
Yes, soon enough. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.